Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our status call for the tabletop engagement. So we deem about 20% into the engagement, just because majority of the time really comes towards the drafting towards the end, the after action report. We've got some really good accomplishment from last week. Thank you so much, Andrew. I know I kind of bugged you a lot about getting scheduling done, but we do have another technical discussion part two that's scheduled for next week. So that's underway. And if we all have been able to successfully, as well here on Unit 42 side, to be able to access the shared drive. So thank you so much for getting that ready for us. A couple of things I do want to ask is that, and I'm going to go to the next screen. This is kind of giving you a high overview in terms of kind of some of the interviews that's been completed, what's up and coming. We do still have the slide review, but that's going to come a little bit in maybe in the next couple of weeks. As teams kind of do wrapping up on their discovery calls, kind of start nailing down more of the injections and things like that. They're going to be able to then move that over to a slide deck, and at that point, that's kind of what I'll be looking to kind of getting that schedule so we can walk the whole team through that. The one couple of things I want to do ask about the actual tabletop exercise, which has already been confirmed for October 7th, is are there going to be any remote attendees from the Grail side?
I would say there are likely to be a couple of them. We should plan for that.
And then I guess my next question would be is the time of start. Are we looking at 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. Pacific time?
Yes. So Nora, keep me honest here. We had mapped this out. Was it, so we wanted to go 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. for the technical Pacific time. Then we're thinking 11 to 12 p.m., 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. for the first half of the executive exercise. Take a break for lunch there. And then have the second hour of the executive exercise followed by a debrief. It's kind of what we envisioned as the choreography of it. I'm not sure if you want to plan for 15 minutes between the two exercises, something to that effect as well. But short answer, a 9 a.m. start, Pacific, okay, for the session.
Okay. So what I could do is set up a meeting invite with the conference line in there for starting at 9 a.m. For the 4-hour duration, and then we can kind of, adjust when we need.
And I think really, when we time block it, it's probably, if we break for a half an hour for lunch, for example, then it would be 4 hours of exercise, half an hour for lunch, and a half hour for a debrief at the end as well. So probably a 5-hour time block. So if you book it for 5 or 6, knowing we're not going to go for 6 hours, to be clear, that could be.
Okay. And then do you want to provide me who you think, if you may know already, of who might be attending remotely, so I can add them to that?
Yeah, because we'll get those names too.
Okay, so with remote attendees. Just so we can go ahead and get that on everyone's calendar. Any questions there in terms of the progress of where we are today?
I have one question. So this, and I'm sorry if I missed, this exercise is going to be in Menlo Park office, right?
That's correct.
So that means I think it makes sense I would secure the room, right? To book the room, Andrew?
That's already been taken care of.
Okay, perfect.
So we have rooms at NPK and RTP for participants.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and that also reminds me, thank you for asking that question, is that Andrew, I'll probably work with you on the side note in terms of the physical location, logistics, getting the address as our team flies into for this exercise, and if there's any kind of badges of security that they need to address or get in place.
Yeah, we'll coordinate all that with the facility.
Yeah, we'll coordinate that later. That's all I have. Anything else before I turn it over to the Unit 42 team to kind of dig a little bit deeper in terms of where we are?
I have no questions on that.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna turn it over to Kyle.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Andrew, we wanted to go through a few things with you. We actually sunk with Lauren earlier today, and we're able to come up with some preemptive ideas for how our injects and the scenario flow, maybe some of the technical details that we're looking to include. So we wanted to kind of just verbally walk you through some of the content. I know Evan's going to be talking to a little bit about it, and then also we did want to tee up for maybe some ideas that are expansive that you're looking for incorporated on top of what we laid out as an initial foundation.
Okay.
Perfect. Evan, I'll turn it over to you to kind of go through that high level. We're not going to be sharing anything on the screen currently, but we do. We'll put together something with Hogan to make sure that we can get a nice first initial outline going, and then also please take into account like anything that we're referencing. Since we were just provisioned that G Drive access, we're still going through that documentation and finding those documents in critical systems and anything within it to really make this more catered to your to your scenario. This was primarily based on the technical discovery interview and the LIMS interview that we conducted.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, Evan, I will hand it over to you.
All right, thanks, Kyle. So we're going to be going through 4 different injects as part of the technical portion of this tabletop exercise. This, again, I will be a little bit high level, so level 100, 200. If we need to dig into the very technical details, the granularities, if you will, we can. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep it a little bit synoptic if possible. So we'll start with inject 1 here. So again, this will be the initial alert. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, the Grail scene, Panther Labs, triggers an alert detecting an unusual file encryption activity on multiple clients and endpoints via the. Yep.
Are you sharing your screen? I don't see anything.
No. Yeah, so Ryan, for this portion, we're actually not sharing the technical details, and so for a variety of reasons, but yeah, so it's still a little bit informative stage.
Okay, apologies on that, sorry.
That's okay, yeah, no worries. So we'll just say that anomalous activity was identified as related to the LIMS system. Identified abnormalities with compute and CPU on multiple clients, and ransom notes began to appear on several clients. Initial analysis indicated that this was phishing related. That was the initial attack vector from a corporate-wide email appearing to originate from a trusted vendor. So you can think of this related to DEC, so business email compromise, as the primary attack vector. Thoughts, concerns? What do you think?
So, as we're going through BEC, we really do want to go through ransomware in the exercise. So, where's the BEC being inserted into it? Because I think that is ransomware still on the agenda here?
It is, yeah. So part of that inject is that ransom notes begin to appear on those client workstations. And so for those EKS clusters, for example, they're using EBS, right, for storage. And so hypothetically, if a bad actor wanted to, instead of using an AWS managed KMS, could very well use CMK, right, where they have access over the key policy, and they could define it such that it locks out everyone, right? That's a good use case scenario whereby an attacker can use an AWS compute instance, but with a CMK instead of AWS managed.
All right, so you're going for compromise to gain elevation and escalation of privileges as opposed to email extortion of, hey, we're sending you an invoice, hey, pen $10 million over here, send something different.
Right, yep, yeah, so if they eventually were able to do lateral movement to a client workstation and were able to encrypt the workstation to lock out users.
Okay.
Is that like,
perfect?
Let me know if technically that sounds sound to you. I've seen that before, but.
Ryan, Danny, thoughts?
I think, yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Initially it sounds fine to me. Sounds good. It makes sense. I don't have any initial thoughts. I'm good with it for right now.
And then of course,
And the only
Andrew,
thing, sorry, Kyle, I just want to jump in real quick. The only thing that I did want to add is this is obviously a very condensed high level of what the inject is going to entail. We don't want to lead the witness too much, right? We're providing a lot of details to you right now, but the way that the story is going to be written, it's not going to lead the witness. So there's going to be a lot of response that's required from your teams, a lot of critical thinking in there. So we're not going to give too much information on the first slide that tells them all of this, right? We're going to kind of provide enough information to encourage broader conversation, and then maybe follow up on the next slide with some more of those technical details, if you will.
Got it. I'll tell you what, Evan, why don't I take, we'll take a pause. We'll just listen to the entire vector you see coming through here, so I don't misinterpret BEC as extortion again. So I think we're good. So then where do we see it going from here?
Yep. So that will pivot into inject 2. So with inject 2, this is going to be scope expansion is the primary element. So within an hour, additional alerts from Panther Labs and CrowdStrike indicate lateral movement, just as we talked about across both environments. So AWS and on-prem for those LIMS components. So we identified that LIMS exist both on-prem and AWS. The incident has now spread to a pre-post system, which is closely coupled with LIMS and handles PII. So VPC flow logs and EKS logs, which are not being ingested by Panther Labs, show suspicious activity, making it difficult to fully ascertain the scope quickly. Estimated downtime for the critical LIMS operations, including patient scheduling and lab workflows, is now 4 hours and rising. So the emphasis there, right, is the VPC flow logs and EKS logs, right? So Panther Labs right now is ingesting a select log source or select selection of log sources, right? Which is not inclusive of VPC flow logs and EKS logs. So that's where that inject is kind of harping on that. Okay. Thoughts, concerns? Let me know if that needs to be modified or tweaked.
No initial thoughts. I mean, my only thing, so the VPC flow logs, that's fine. That's an understandable one. But the EKS one, I mean, we do have guard duty in place. I mean, so there's a difference between having the raw audit logs, but then also having a system that is monitoring EKS for anomalous activity. So I guess that kind of harp on that one as much.
Yeah, so those EKS logs, you're talking about CloudWatch?
No, yeah, like control plane logs, right? Yeah, so we don't have the raw control plane logs for EKS, but we do have guard duty monitoring our EKS environment for anomalous activity, I guess is a way to put it.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fair call out because if guard duty has existed beyond the 30 days, it's established a baseline. It indicates anomalous activity through the API activity.
Yeah.
It's a fair call out. Amanda, we may need to think about tweaking that a little bit. I'll include that within my notes here.
Perfect, sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Right. We good with moving on here?
Yeah.
Or not right. Andrew, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Sure thing. Yep. So this is now inject 3. This is starting to focus a little bit on the ransomware element of this tabletop exercise. So this is ransom node and indicators of compromise spread. A ransom node is successfully recovered, explicitly mentioning the exfiltration of patient diagnoses, PHI, from the LIMS application and sensitive financial data from a related system. The threat actor claims double extortion, threatening public release of PHI, PII financial records in 48 hours if their demands are not fully met. Furthermore, indicators of compromise are discovered in Google Workspace logs showing lateral movement into other critical financial systems and potentially the AWS data lake. Technical teams must now weigh the credibility of the exfiltration claim given the double extortion threat, even without immediate proof. So this touches on the double extortion that is a very real scenario that does happen, whereby if the threat actor, the bad actor, does not identify any urgency with his financial demands being met, he's going to disclose sensitive data to the public. So some compliance implications there as well. Thoughts, concerns?
I think the double extortion makes sense. It gives us in the other exercise, the discussion about recovery as well as corporate goals and what we would say. What is our corporate brand? Has it aligned? Would we do this and pay to say we did everything we could or what have you?
Yep. Something that Kyle, Lauren, and I had talked about prior to this was the 48-hour timeline. Now, from a decision-making perspective, does that make sense? Now, of course, threat actors won't care if that timeline makes sense to you, but from an executive perspective, the ability to come to a consensus, especially if this is inclusive of a ransom negotiator into the mix to potentially delay the threat actor from doing something final and malicious, but does that timeline make sense?
You know, I heard 48, I was wondering if 72 might make more sense, but probably not much more than that.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you in the middle of your sentence.
Please.
What's the most realistic time frame that someone would provide?
Yeah, so we were actually talking about that before this as well. So realistically, that does tech. If
Oh, sorry, Evan, you
bad actor,
you
so
cut out.
is,
You cut out, Evan. We missed what you said.
oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you just repeat what you said? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. So realistically, that timeline is feasible. It's viable. What may happen is that the threat actor identifies one from that law enforcement is closing in on him or her, and they have to act urgently to either wreak havoc or cause as much damage as possible. So if they identify that their financial demands are not being met, they may want to, out of desperation, just disclose everything to the public. So some type of darknet repository, something through Tor, for example. And so that 48 hours is realistic. And so it just depends on where that threat actor is, whether he's being pursued by law enforcement or if they feel that they're not getting enough attention. But that is a realistic timeline.
Yeah, my head is kind of in the 48-hour window because 72 hours seems like a long time for someone to give us in this scenario. But Andrew and others, I want to make sure that that's just what I'm thinking, but very open to other thoughts.
Well, and if I could just jump in real quick too, and sorry, I'm not on video having wonderful outlook and all of the issues today. But to kind of jump in with how we see this play out with various ransomware incidents, a ransom note that we'll see on an organization's systems or sent by a threat actor may have like a 48-hour timeline, right? It's like very threatening. The threat actor is going to be grandstanding, of course, because that's how these go. But then what the organization is going to be faced with would be, decision making. What third parties are brought in to, for example, negotiate with a threat actor, et cetera. The other things that we may see that happen is, let's say there's this 48-hour window. It may not mean that there's going to be a complete data dump on the dark web after 48 hours. There are other, kind of options that threat actors may take, like for instance, just naming an organization on a leak site, just naming them as a victim, as opposed to doing like a full-blown, here's a data dump. So I just want to make sure that we're not saying that it's a 48-hour window and then everything is exposed or exposed on the dark web. But there are, kind of other factors to consider here as well.
Lauren, that's a great call out. And that's actually very valid from what we've seen from historical context, whereby instead of doing full dumps, they're done in iterations. So 25,000 records, every, say, 48 hours that demands aren't being met. And so that's definitely a fair call out.
Yes, I think takeaway is it's a timeline that we're comfortable with. We may shift a little bit, but I think notionally we're directionally correct there.
Okay. Yep. So that is your footnotes here. All right, so now we'll shift over to Inject 4, which is containment and isolation. The idea here is stress test. So despite active containment efforts leveraging redundant pathways via transit gateway and Prisma access, critical LIMS backups, both AWS and on-prem, are tested for recovery, and they're confirmed to be corrupted and inaccessible, unfortunately. So the MDR team identifies the initial entry point as a specific endpoint containing PHI that was missing its CrowdStrike EDR agent. This gap occurred despite ARMIS, which is the asset inventory tool, showing the endpoint as inventoried, highlighting the deployment discrepancy that facilitated the initial breach. Additionally, further analysis indicated that the resource was not properly tagged with the corresponding data type as containing PHI. So one of the elements that this touches on is tagging strategy. So ensuring that resources that are deployed contain the appropriate tag that indicates the data classification and sensitivity. And also this touches on the potential for compute instances that are not properly baselined with the CrowdStrike EDR agent. So, and finally, too, at the very top there, as mentioned at the very beginning of the inject, was file integrity and backup validation. So multiple elements, multiple themes there. Let me know your thoughts.
Where is in this inject, where is the compute located? Are we talking about compute in AWS or compute on-prem?
So with LIMS, right, it's decentralized. So if you want, we can go after both on-prem and AWS, right? So I guess ostensibly that would be EKS. And again, I'm not sure what you're using on-prem for compute, but EKS or otherwise.
Okay. Felix, I'm just trying to make sure that the highlight, maybe I misheard you, just to correct me if I'm wrong, you're highlighting that the EDR agent is not installed on this compute? Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So if so if we're targeting, you know, AWS, so EKS, so we do have CrowdStrike installed when it comes to our EKS clusters. We have very good coverage there. And then also when it comes to on-prem, we have very good coverage when it comes to it being installed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
would you say, are these provisioned through golden images? Is there a golden image pipeline that's forced to be used?
No, there's not a golden image pipeline, but we utilize to deploy a daemon set to have a daemon set deployment for our EKS clusters to install the CrowdStrike agent on those nodes.
Okay.
Yeah, but it is a good call in terms of we don't have the golden image because that is, you know, the best option to be able to get the appropriate coverage that we need. But when it comes to EKS and managing the CrowdStrike deployment is through Helm and through daemon set deployments.
Is there a potential for a cluster to miss baselining or onboarding if there is a disruption in network connectivity?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, so the place where I could think that something doesn't have CrowdStrike potentially installed would be like an out-of-band kind of deployment, like something that doesn't go through our Terraform process for deployment resources. Like somebody goes to the account and deploy something. Now, of course, that's not typical, right? We do have Terraform to enforce that, or we have all of our deployments through IAC, but that would be the place where, you know, CrowdStrike potentially doesn't get deployed or installed on out-of-band deployment.
Is there a service control policy that prohibits or restricts the creation of EKS outside of Terraform?
It was not. So that would be the way to highlight it, is my
Yep. Yep, got it. Okay, just identifying attack vectors here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Then let's move here. From a tagging strategy perspective, does that make sense as well? So within an AWS organization, is the tagging strategy established right now? Does it restrict resource creation to specific tags?
No, we do not restrict. So the tagging side of it is definitely feasible. We don't have SCP policies in place to restrict the creation of resources that don't have tags, but we do have infrastructure in place to remediate things that are untagged.
Is that using, excuse me, systems manager or Lambda functions, or maybe even?
I believe it's step function. If you look at functions underneath the hood, and it utilizes the resources manager, I think there's a resources manager tagging API to identify resources and identify their tags, and then to get the diff and see what it doesn't have a tag, and then apply the appropriate tag. But again, I'd have to double click into how that is triggered. I want to say it's scheduled and not necessarily an event based. So right, there could be a discrepancy, right, where somebody maybe deploys something out of band, and before our auto remediation is able to kick off based off of a schedule, it doesn't have a tag associated with it.
So essentially, maybe a event bridge that runs off the current schedule.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, so potentially there could be a window of opportunity there in which it could be missed. Okay. And as far as the backup validation and integrity check, let's just walk through that real quick to make sure that's accurate. So for the AWS side of things, are you using AWS backup or other solution?
I know that there are accounts that are using it. I wouldn't be able to speak specifically to LIMS. Patrick on a previous call would be able to, but I would assume they are using AWS backup, or at least they are taking snapshots of their clusters. Or their
okay. Yep. And then are those snapshots encrypted with AWS managed or CMKs?
It should be, I would probably say it's AWS managed. But that'd be a better Patrick question, but I can also double check.
Okay. And then how often would you say that those snapshots are restored for functionality checks?
That's a good question. I would assume probably not very often. But I don't want to speak for the LIMS team and them testing their own DR stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So
any questions, Evan? We're happy to follow up on our side and see if we can get these for you.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure the inject makes sense. So I think from a cursory level, it looks like it does, but Andrew, we'll wait to hear back from you to make sure that technically it's sound.
Yeah, Ryan, I think with your comments in there, it sounds like we'll have enough texture to talk about the teams in terms of some of those takeaways, the analysis all need to get conducted. Danny, as this commander, any additional thoughts in terms of the overall flow prior to keeping this below our SEV 1, SEV 2 and the exact exercise?
I'm just thinking about the one that asking about the DR. I was thinking about that. Again, unfortunately, I'm like with Ryan, I don't know the answer to that. So I think that's something important to find out,
Yeah.
After the meeting, will there be like a quick AI just send out saying some open item that Grill needs to follow up? Action items that we need to track down, like Andrew say.
Wait, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Evan, so when you go into this question for injects, if for some of the question that we don't have answer for you, of course we like to follow up, right? To get you that answer. Will there be a meeting recapping out after today?
Amanda, Ellie, thoughts on that? Just to sync back up to go through the feedback one more time.
I might be able to provide a little insight into that. I think a lot of these questions, Evan, if we document them as follow-ups and possibly provide them to the Grail team, we can utilize the time that we have set out next week as our secondary technical discovery to get some of those answers. So we can utilize that meeting as an all-encompassing secondary discovery meeting. And then that meeting is going to flow very greatly now that we have the documentation, because we're going to come into it with a bunch of follow-ups, and we can also give you possibly an agenda list of what categories we're going to go into to make sure the right SMEs are on the call, to learn a little bit more about the environment to make sure that it's catered.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I think just having the agenda out so we could possibly do some events research or have the right SME on the call.
Perfect. And then these are just some general ideas on the index that we wanted to make sure that the flow works. We do have to rearrange the content, of course, and write the index to where we're not leading the witness, as Amanda was saying. We want to make sure that we're allowing for that hypothetical situation where teams need to be able to react and talk to some of the process and procedure that they're performing, maybe without any of or with a limited amount of actual technical details defined to them. And then we can open it up after the initial inject of those talk-throughs into some of the technical details that we'll iron out with you guys to make sure that it's something that you would see in your environment that can aid in that investigative process of being the development into where the executive team would have to now make decisions. Perfect. Amanda, I think that it looks good with Inject 1 through 4, and I know that we talked to Lauren about kind of, the flow of how we'll do the handoff, and I think we're all aligned on the ideas. Is there anything else that you think we need to go over, or you think it'll really depend on that document analysis as well as that secondary discovery meeting to get an ironed out outline that we can now share?
Yeah, I think we're in a really good spot as far as meeting next week, kind of fleshing out the fine details. And then I think after that, and Lauren, this might be more focused for the Hogan team, I'd like to set up some time specifically with Hogan to talk through Index 5 through 8. I know that we met on that earlier today, and I just wanted to see how we can assist you all in ironing out those details. Here in the next week or so, we're going to have to put pen to paper and start building out the presentation portion. So anything that our team can do to help align with you all on that, just let us know. But if we could get some time in preparation for that to sync with you all, that would be amazing.
Yep, that sounds good. And I spoke with the team a bit earlier today, Amanda, too, about kind of like whether we'll be syncing via call or email or whatever works best. So I know I have some time next week and more than happy to chat.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Just so we can iron out some of the details of what the presentation flow is going to look like too, I want to make sure that that's fluid and it works with what your expectations are as well. I'm not sure if Kyle had mentioned the idea of possibly like a small threat briefing, kind of integrating that in. So where normally your Unit 42 or your CrowdStrike or Mandiant would come in and they would provide some more of those forensic details. We thought it would be a really cool touch to possibly do, just a mild threat briefing slide, giving you all the details that you need to be armed with for the executives to come in and make those decisions. So just some cool details and some ideas that we've been coming up with. I know we talked a little bit about like either working sessions or things we could do to exhaust some of that time too. We want to make sure that everyone is engaged and it's an enjoyable experience for everyone as well as a learning experience.
Yep, sounds good.
Perfect. That's really all from my end. Thank you, team, for covering everything so well today. I think we're in a really great spot. So yeah, if there's nothing else from the Unit 42 side, I think I'm good from my end.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
No, I'll let you continue. I was just getting nothing on my end, but it sounds like you got something.
Oh yeah, no, I was going to ask you, just going back to inject number 2 on the VPC flow logs, can you just read me inject number 2 again? I just want to understand
Yeah.
how flow logs is involved.
Yep, for sure. Okay. Let's read it real quick. So I'll just read the whole thing. Within an hour, additional alerts from Panther Labs and CrowdStrike indicate lateral movement across both AWS and on-prem LIMS components. The incident has now spread to the pre-post system, which is closely coupled with LIMS and handles PII. This is the VPC flow logs part right here. VPC flow logs and EKS logs, which are not centralized in Panther Labs, show suspicious activity, making it difficult to fully ascertain the scope quickly.
Okay.
So to your point, you called out that CloudTrail through API activity would get picked up or would be referenced within Panther Labs and logs. It hints at CloudWatch logs, and that we can tweak that. I think really it should be EKS application logs, not just EKS logs.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the VPC flow logs component is to be able to identify east-west traffic in the VPC itself.
Yep.
So Evan, I got a question. So like these
Sure.
3 or 4 inject, and they're all time bound, right? I mean, they'll be managed by a clock. Then this is what I'm thinking because I haven't gone through this, tabletop exercise fully. So this is my first one. So all these inject, it'll be time bound. Then what will happen next? And in terms of, I assume someone read this out. What are the next steps then?
You're saying so after inject 4?
Correct.
So
Provide some
yeah, I was going to let you. Kyle and I were actually talking about that before this, and I'll let Kyle kind of assume the reins on explaining the transition that we anticipate.
Yeah, so the transition that we anticipate are those technical teams will understand the technical attributes for it. And then we were talking with Lauren about, having some of those stakeholders that are across in both the technical and the executive exercise. Like Danny, I believe that you'll be involved with both to provide a little bit of light into there. But after we transfer it over to Hogan, we're looking at the ideas of activating your core team, looking at your visibility and communications, going through your materiality and communications, and then your decision-making process, your pay, don't pay decision, what recovery operations would go into play, and really at the high level, those decisions that are going to happen among the executive team. Now, knowing a tabletop exercise, typically all the teams are strategizing among each other throughout the course of the incident. But for this specific one, how it's designed is those technical teams are going to be the primary player in that first part. We may have to sprinkle in some technical details throughout the second part where the executives are in, just to kind of provide a further amount of light so that, everything is fleshed out in order to make an informed decision for the tabletop. But primarily, it's for the sake of this exercise, it's going to shift to an entirely executive level after we do all of the investigation efforts and talk about our tooling and how we're actually analyzing what's happening.
Absolutely, and just to kind of piggyback off that a little bit, when we do tabletops that are executive focused that don't have a technical portion like this one, what we'll do is just kind of state the technical facts as just that. They're facts that essentially are part of the injects that go into the executive portion. So, here's what's happening in terms of scope and nature of the attack. Here's what's happening in terms of recovery options. That's just kind of additional snippets of information that then go into executive decision-making, as opposed to, requiring technical expertise or technical input of the executives. Does that help?
Yeah.
All right. I know Amanda said nothing more on the Unit 42 side. On the Grail side, any additional questions? I think next steps is we're going to go and have that technical discovery meeting next week. we're going to go pen to paper and understand those documents that you submitted to us and make sure that we're walking through and deeply understanding the environment, as well as we're going to set up working sessions with Hogan on their end in order to make sure that we're developing this scenario and being as cohesive as possible to make that shift and that transfer very elegant between the teams.
Yeah, there's just one thing I wanted to flag real quick. It doesn't look like this was included in the document requests that you sent over, but we are just putting the finishing touches on updates to our privacy incident response plan. So we'll also be uploading those into the the file early next week. So thanks for your patience on that. We've had to pull some things together, but yeah, it'll be coming to you guys. So thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And then also, Amanda said it in the kickoff call, obviously we love documentation as soon as possible, but any additional documentation that you're providing, feel free to, drop it in there. We'll take notice to everything. We kind of track it on our end. And also, if you do have any additional documentation that we may have not outlined that you would like to provide a little bit more insight into the environment, maybe something that correlates to a associated document, feel free to put it inside of the drive. That was kind of just an outline that we provide clients in order to give a baseline of what we look for. But anything extra is always nice to have to be able to get deeper into the environment.
Great.
Perfect. Anything more on the Unit 42 side? Otherwise, I think we are good to give everyone 15 minutes back, and then I hope everybody has an amazing weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, nothing on my end. For the Grill team, I'm going to be drafting just some follow-up questions that we talked about today, just for after action to be answered on your end. But yeah, just be on the lookout for those questions.
Sounds good. We'll watch for those and try and resolve as many as we can before our next phone call.
Sounds good. All right, thank you everybody, and we look forward to continuing the process and have an amazing weekend.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.